Okay. I told you, however, I'm lazy, so this isn't gonna be a full character guide where I tell you how her kit works and how to build her. This video assumes you already know all of that. What I'll be focusing on instead is how to actually play her, which teams are good, why they're good, how to do their rotations, and give general tips and tricks along the way. Everything I say will be based on my own testing and my own calcs. It is both possible that I made mistakes and that there is someone out there who knows better. This isn't the end-all be-all of Arlecchino guides. I'm not even a guide maker, I'm just making this since a bunch of you asked for it. Okay, now that that's out of the way, you can skip to this timestamp to get started on the guide right away. But also I want to say two things first. One, I posted a poll asking if I should upload the video right away or wait for the new patch. Most of you voted to post it right away, but there I was saying, you know, fuck democracy, this is a tyranny, my channel, but I should have fucking listened. Because my god, are there so many new teams and new options that are situationally better than the old ones? I should have just posted the old video and ran away because damn. And the second thing is, this will probably be my last meta video. Lately these whole values, tier lists, arguing, dick measuring contests have sucked a lot of the fun out of the game for me. I feel like myself as well as the overall community have become more and more meta pilled over the past few years, and I just don't want to participate anymore. So yeah, this will probably be my last meta video. Good riddance. I think I'll focus on like some more quirky stuff, like, I don't know, DPS Shenhe, DPS Lanya, some like interesting game mechanics, I don't know, whatever I find interesting. If you have any suggestions, I like to hear them. But yeah, anyway, so let's move on with the video. Alright, first we need to talk about her combos and about her burst. For the combos, you generally want to do repetitions of 3 normal attacks into a dash, also known as N3D. It is both the fastest combo in terms of animation time and also just deals the most damage. If you ever run out of stamina, you can cancel it with a jump or a walk instead, or you can do a couple of N5s. Overall, doing N3D is not necessary except in one team, so you don't have to do them, but you clicked on the video and you want to know what's optimal, there you go, that's optimal. As for the burst, you almost never want to press that button. It's a fairly large DPS loss. It's always going to be a better idea to cancel your normal attack string early so you can dodge the enemy attack rather than tanking the attack and then having to use the burst to heal. Remember, she does have the damage reduction passive and fairly decent defensive base stats, so you can actually tank a surprising amount of hits. But if you ever screw up so much that you have to use the burst to heal, like, you might as well just restart. But if you don't like restarting, you can maybe look to use the burst at the end of the chamber or while the boss is in some stalling phase. Yeah, also you can use the burst to reset her skill cooldown to gain more particles, and you can funnel that to whoever needs it. And one last thing to mention, I will be giving out exact rotation examples, but you don't need to follow them precisely, except one of them. The thing with Arlecchino is that she's super flexible. Your infusion will never run out and you'll always be gaining more bond of life. So if you see an opportunity where, for example, the enemy is low HP and you can extend the rotation by using her skill again and maybe refreshing just the VV instead of starting a whole other rotation, you can take it. Or if you need to spam her charge attack to apply pyro faster to break a shield, you can do that. If you messed up the timing for something on your first rotation, you can maybe look to fix it in the second one, which will matter more. Sometimes you can kill the first group of enemy with just your skills on certain characters. Basically, the example rotations I give are not set in stone and you can adjust them for whatever situation you're in. Alright, now let's do the teams. We'll start off with Melt because it's the strongest. When it comes to Melt, the optimal options are just Citlali. I'm sorry, nobody else even comes close. She really just does too much. She gives Scroll, Resurrect, TDDS or Signature, a shield, has good early constellations, and most importantly, she has the perfect cryo application, as in it matches with all 7 of Arlecchino's pyro applications, allowing her to melt all of them. Or you could go double cryo without Citlali, but that's no longer becomes optimal and you might even have better teams at that point. So we have Citlali, Arlecchino, and Bennett, of course. Who do you go for the last slot? Well, you can theoretically go anyone who can weaken a pyro aura and then not disturb the following cryo aura from Citlali, but there are I would say four main options. You could go Shilonen, you could go Kazuha, you could go Sucrose, or you could go Escoffier. Let's talk about each one. Shilonen, I'd say, is the weakest but most comfortable one. She doesn't bring anything to the table other than the multi-wave Resurrect. Her healing is useless, her being from Natlan is useless, her artifact set options are kinda gimmicky, her long buff uptime is not as valuable comparable to Arlecchino, since she front-loads a lot of her damage anyway. Overall, she's fine, she's easy, she's comfortable, but she's the worst in terms of offensive buffs. Kazuha is slightly better in my opinion. He can use VV, he can group enemies, he can hold Zyphos, but then again so could Chelonin. I'd say he's a bit more consistent than Chelonin, since you don't need to chase the Crystallized Shard, but I don't think it matters anyway between the two of them, since Sucrose is the one you should go for regardless. Sucrose, even C0 Sucrose, is the best one of them all. Her EM share is really strong, because you don't get any extra EM from anywhere else in the team, and Forward Meld is a 2x multiplier, so you get even more value from the EM multiplier. She can use VV, which is very good. Her animation time is super short, all you gotta do is tap her E and swap out. And she's a catalyst, so she has the most weapon options. In the 3-star category, she has the Magic Guide, which is just an EM static, but nice to have. For the 4 stars, she can use Fav Codex, Sac Frags, or Wandering Even Star. Fav is best for team energy, but you only really do 1 or 2 hits with her, so it can be annoying and inconsistent to trigger it. Sac Frags, on the other hand, is a lot more consistent at 80% chance, and you can use it if you don't have her C1 to do 2 skills in a row on the first rotation in Stygian Onslaught, and then funnel the extra particles to Citlali, so Citlali can get her burst up on the very first rotation, even if she's on TTDS or Signature. But if you do have C1, then you can just put her on Wandering Even Star. It's really good at any refinement level. As for the 5-star weapon options, you obviously have 1000 Floating Dreams for the EM buff, and you have the 2 other ones which are just stat sticks which increase her EM share. But yeah, overall Sucrose super cheap, super good, has a lot of options, she gives the most buffs. I will get into how to do the rotations with her as soon as I wrap it up with our last contestant, Escoffier. Escoffier is a bit of a wild card. She doesn't buff Arlecchino in any way other than Cryo Resonance, but as we all know, Escoffier is broken. She also benefits from Citlali being Cryo, since Scroll buffs both elements, and they both produce Cryo particles, so they can battery each other. She also benefits from Noblesse and Pyro Resonance, and her burst will benefit from the Bennett buff. So yeah, Escoffier can be a strong option, but it really depends on how good her build is and what weapon you're using on her. I'm mainly referring to the signature here. And also double cryo is a bit more forgiving when it comes to rotations. Okay, speaking of rotations, finally, how do you do them? You open up with Arlecchino's skill as usual, and then immediately go into Bennett burst. You don't want to use Bennett's skill unless you actually have to, but the particles from Arlecchino's skill should usually be good enough, but in Stygian or whatever you can use it, it's fine, it doesn't change anything. Then you go right into Sucrose and use her tap skill. Again, in Stygian, you can use her skill twice on the first rotation to funnel the extra particles to Citlali. Then you swap to Citlali, use her skill, 1 normal attack, and then burst. You need that 1 normal attack to remove any underlying pyro aura, so that her burst applies cryo. Then you swap to Arlecchino and immediately do her charge attack. Do not cancel the charge attack. We specifically added that 1 normal attack on Citlali so that we can melt it. If you're struggling with the timing, I found that spamming the swap button while you're in the middle of Citlali's burst makes her swap much more consistent, and you can hit the charge attack without messing up your auras. Then you start doing your N3Ds. For the first couple of them, you can do them as fast as you can, but once you start nearing the end, you will have to start delaying them a little bit. Now, it's hard for me to tell you exactly, frame perfectly how long you have to wait, but what I found that helps is instead of dashing into the enemy, you can dash in the opposite direction of them so that she has to travel a bit further to hit them when you do the normal attack. And another thing that I found helpful was just relaxing yourself. Like at the start of the rotation, you lock in, really focus on landing the charge attack. Then as the rotation progresses, you breathe, relax yourself, relax your muscles. Your body will kind of naturally slow down a little bit. I know it sounds weird and stupid, but like just try it. You have nothing to lose. Also, don't worry if you mess it up for the first few times you try doing it. It's fine. You can practice as much as you want. Pick any enemy you want. You'll have a shield anyways. Put Fab on everyone. Nerf your Arlecchino's damage and just practice. You'll get it in no time. There are, however, 3 exceptions to this. 3 exceptions where you don't use the charge attack. First, if you have really high ping, it might make it more difficult or just impossible to melt it. I've managed to land it consistently at 120 ping while my internet was bad, and I don't know if anything beyond that changes the way you have to play. If you simply just can't get the charge attack in time, then don't, it's fine. Second, if there are multiple enemies, you won't be able to apply Citlali's normal attack to all of them. It's fine, you can skip it. And third, if you have C2, that obviously changes things, since it's an additional instance of pyro application. I don't have C2, so I can't test it, but from what I've seen in speedruns and stuff, they usually cancel the charge attack and basically replace what would be the charge attack with the C2 explosion. If you are in any of those three exceptions, and you have her signature weapon, which gives you extra bond of life when a charge attack hits an opponent, you can just do a normal empty charge attack at the start of the rotation before even using her skill. Oh, and also, if you play Scaffier, she needs to go after Citlali, because Citlali won't be able to trigger a melt for scroll. Okay, on to Overload now. The old best Overload team used to be Chevreuse, Jansa, Fischl, and I will talk about that team later, but for now we have to talk about Durin. He is a straight up upgrade, but the question is, which character does he replace? It can be Fischl, since Fischl needs to be there to activate the Hexenzirkel resonance. Well, I can't test the teams myself since I can't afford Durin, but from my calcs, it looks like it's gonna be an it depends situation, where it depends mostly on which constellation is your Jansa or Chevy. If they're both C6, it looks like Chevreuse is a bit better, and I do mean a bit, since the thing that noticeably tips the scale is actually her own personal damage, and I don't think most people have their Chevy built with crit. If neither of them are C6, then probably Jansa wins in most cases, since she has more useful constellations along the way to C6, while Chevy is more C6 or nothing. Jansa does also trigger an overload reaction earlier in the rotation, meaning Fischl can have her own buff right away. Again, I can't test it personally, so I can't vouch for either one. I think they're both gonna be really good teams either way, and having more options is always better. So if you do have both as C6, you can try them each and see which one works better for you. You could also look to use Bennett, however he loses a decent amount of value here, since Durin is already on a bless, and Bennett himself might struggle to proc scroll, because there will just be so much pyro on the enemy all the time. Durin also doesn't snapshot, so there's that. Overall, like, you can definitely use him, and at C6 he might be better than the others at C0. I mean, I'm not gonna calculate every single scenario, I told you I'm lazy, but he's definitely a fine option, so I thought I should mention it. Now let's talk about the Durinless teams, since while they're no longer optimal, they are still quite strong, and I've already written 2 pages for them before he released. The thing you need to know with Durinless Overload is that there are 2 versions, the one with Fischl and the ones without Fischl. If you are going to use Fischl, then you don't want to use Bennett. You want to use Jansa instead. This is because of the way Chevreuse works. To get her 40% attack boost from her skill, you need to trigger an overload reaction first. And if you're using Bennett, the only other Electro character in the team will be Fischl. And since Fischl does snapshot, she wouldn't get the Chevreuse buff unless you swap back into her one more time, or you use a charge attack with her bow to trigger the overload. Both of those options kind of suck and are clunky and extend your rotations. The problem does go away in the second rotation, since Chevy's buff lasts for 30 seconds, but you would still want to use Jansa anyway. Let's talk about Jansa and why she's so good. Well, first off, she's Electro, so she instantly fixes the overload problem. Second, she's from Natline, so she gives scroll on both Arlecchino and Fischl. Third, she's Electro, so with Fischl she unlocks the Electro Resonance. That, combined with Fischl's own abundant particle generation, means that basically nobody on the team will have ER problems. Not that this team is very reliant on bursts anyway, but it's good for Stygian Onslaught. It's again a Arlecchino team where you can start playing your normal rotations right from the start. If you have Jansa on C1 and she's on an ER weapon, right, since you can funnel Arlecchino's particles straight to her, she can just skill and burst right away. And even if you're using a weapon that gives lower attack, you're not gonna be losing out on the attack transfer, since you already have a lot of team-wide attack buffs. Also, another thing that's really nice about Jansa is that she doesn't restrict you to a circle. This is why Overload is my go-to team for events and stuff, because you can just play with your eyes closed. So yeah, Jansa with Fischl, very good, and for other off-field Electro applicators, Bennett is still as great as always, but you can still also just use Jansa even if the other Electro isn't Fischl. Alright, let's get into the rotations. They're very simple. For the Fischl Jansa variant, you open up with Arlecchino's skill as usual, straight into Jansa's skill and burst, then into Chevy's skill and burst. Her burst is not necessary, but you can use it to trigger Noblesse, and you also just have spare time since the setup on this team is very fast. And lastly, you use Fischl's burst or skill before swapping back to Arlecchino and doing her combos. If you have Fischl's burst available, I advise using that instead of the skill, since it keeps you moving and it does a bit of extra damage with one of her constellations. And also for Arlecchino's field time, after her 6th N3 string, her skill is gonna be off cooldown. You do use her skill and then do another N3 right after because Yansan's cooldown is 18 seconds, so we have time to spare. For other Electros like Cookie or Ryden, you go Arlecchino into Electro, into Chevy, into Bennett, and then back to Arlecchino. As for Vape, there are honestly a lot of different options that are all kind of similar to each other but also different. It really depends a lot on how well built your Hydro characters are, what weapons they're using, and what constellations they have. The three main options are gonna be Yelan, C6 Candace, or Mona. All the other ones have some sort of downside or just don't provide anything other than the Hydro application. Let's start off with C6 Candace since she's the easiest. You'll also want Bennett of course, and then either Shilonen or Kazuha or Sucrose. Other VV options can also work, and it matters less here since the damage ceiling is a lot lower than Melt, but yeah. You basically just go Arlecchino skill into Bennett's skill burst, or just burst, into your VV skill, into Candace skill burst, and back into Arlecchino, and then do her 610 3D. Very short, very simple, works in AoE, works in multi-wave. I do recommend going Instructor on Candace if you can afford to do so, otherwise Scroll is fine. Also, if you're using Shilonen, she can go before Bennett. For Yelan, she's more single target oriented, and we are focusing more on her own personal damage with a double swirl setup, so you will need Kazuha to make it work. You start the rotation with Arlecchino's skill and funnel it right into Yelan's burst. Then you cancel her normal attack animation with a swap to Bennett. This is so that Bennett's burst doesn't end up applying pyro and just vapes instead. Then you swap to Kazuha and cancel another normal attack with his hold skill. This way he will swirl Hydro on his way up and swirl pyro on the way down. Then you swap back to Yelan and use her skill, which will vape for a nice chunk of damage and automatically shoot her dice once. Then you go back to Arlecchino and do the normal combo. By the time you're done, Yelan's burst will be back off cooldown and you can start it all again. As I've said, this rotation focuses more on Yelan's personal damage, so the better your Yelan is, the better the overall team DPS is gonna be. And then we have Mona with the new Hexenzirkel buff. Mona, she can be a bit all over the place. The thing is, she has very high ER requirements to the point where you'll have to go 2-piece and then maybe even an ER weapon, but her buff is actually really strong and she has a lot of constellations which increase her value, like all the way up to C4. And then on top of that, the difference between TDDS and an ER weapon is also massive. So all in all, it's very difficult for me to say whether Mona is optimal for you. She might be, she might not be, it depends. Generally speaking, if she is C0 with TTDS, then she will be roughly on par with Candace and Yelan. Her numbers are a bit higher on a spreadsheet, but since she takes more field time, the buffs from Sucrose end up expiring a bit earlier, so it kinda evens out. If you have constellations though, especially multiple of them, she will just be better. The rotation is fairly similar to Candace. You go Arlecchino, Bennett, Sucrose, and then Mona burst, skill, and 3 normal attack. Then you go back to Arlecchino, charge stack, 6 and 3D. We're not gonna be able to vape all 7 of Arlecchino's hits, but you'll get the charge attack and the first 4 normals, and that's fine because she front loads. Now that we've gone over Vape, let's talk about Overvape.
A joke. Albeit not a funny one.
So for Overvape, we do now have another option with Fischl and Mona. They're both Hexenzirkel and unlock each other's resonances, but how good are they? Unfortunately not that great. Fischl's Electro application does seem to mess up Mona's Hydro application, and I was only able to vape 2 of Arlecchino's normal attacks and the charge stack. Maybe it's just a skill issue on my part, but I've tried a bunch of different setups and I was never able to consistently get a lot of vapes with Arlecchino. Still though, we do end up getting both Official's buffs, and at C6 they're doubled, so it's still a very viable team, and you could look to potentially use it against bosses where you need electrocharged and stuff like that. But the highest DPS Overvape team that I got in my spreadsheet was Ineffa and Yelan. Now, huge disclaimer before I start talking about Ineffa, I don't have Ineffa. I would like to have her, but I don't. And not only that I don't have her, I don't have any other character which enables me to use Lunar Charge, so it was very difficult for me to try and figure out in depth how Lunar Charge works so I could calculate it. I think I managed to do it right in the end, or at the very least I don't think it's a huge disaster. It was also difficult finding proper rotations online, but from what I've looked at, my Lunar Charge numbers were in the same ballpark as them. But still, take whatever I'm about to say with a huge grain of salt. Ineffa with Yelan does seem to be the best Overvape team right now. I don't know the exact rotation, but I don't see why it will be anything other than Arlecchino into Yelan, into Ineffa, into Bennett. Since Ineffa doesn't snapshot, there is no point for her to go before Bennett. And I assume Yelan should go early so that her burst has more time to charge up. And this team seems to be around 6 to 7% better than the mono-official one. Again, depends massively on your build, constellations, and weapons. As for Ascendant Gleam Overvape, I don't need to have an accurate Ineffa sheet to tell you that Aino sucks. She doesn't do anything other than be from Natkarai and apply Hydro. She doesn't give any buffs before constellations, and even those are pretty weak. She does no personal damage, and her Hydro application isn't even that good. It takes a while for her burst to start shooting. You will have to go burst then skill, which means you will have to wait longer to catch her particles, or book if you're in Abyss. It's just kinda clunky, but she does enable Ascendant Gleam, meaning you can take advantage of both of the new artifact sets and kill the not-cry enemies much faster. Even if the team DPS is significantly lower than Yelan, it's not gonna matter if you're doing double the DPS against certain enemies. Also, one more thing I want to add, I don't look at leaks, or at the very least I try my best to avoid them, but what I'm expecting from Columbina are 3 things. Number 1, she's from Notcry. Number 2, she's Hydro. Number 3, she's a better Hydro than Aino. I don't think those are unreasonable expectations, so in the future we might have a better Ascendant Gleam team, but for now this is it. Okay, Monopyro. Here I kinda don't want to count Durin, since even though he does fit, and you can play him with Albedo, who also gets his own damage doubled, he can give almost as much rest shred as Kazuha while having his own insane personal damage. He would definitely be an upgrade. But if you do want to play an easy mono Arlecchino team with Durin, just add Fischl and play Overload instead. Like we covered, you don't even need Chevreuse anymore, so yeah, that's why I'm gonna skip Durin for this section, since we already covered Overload. Anyways, can you guess what the best Durinless Monopyro team is? Did you guess Chiori? No? What's that? If we don't count Durin, then we shouldn't count Chiori either? Well, suck my ass, buddy. But no, I specifically wanted to talk about Chiori since she's surprisingly synergistic with Arlecchino. But first, let's get the default Monopyro team out of the way real quick. It's these characters in this order. Okay, back to Chiori. How can she possibly be good? Well, first of all, with Shilonen, her damage is actually kinda decent. She gets Scroll, she gets the Rest Shred, she gets Geo Resonance. But don't forget, she does also have a bit of attack scaling in her kit too, so she also benefits from Noblesse and Pyro Resonance. And not only that, she gets value out of Bennett's Burst too. If you didn't know, Chiori's kit is basically made of 3 big hits and 5 smaller hits, and her burst if you use it. And Bennett's Burst buff actually lingers for around 2 seconds on the character after you swap out of them. Now, Chiori will do one of the 3 big hits on field, and the 2 other ones will be from off field. However, one of those 2 hits will happen right away as you start attacking with Arlecchino, so it will still be buffed by the lingering Bennett buff. This also applies to the first of the 5 smaller hits, and of course her burst, which you need to be on field to use anyway. So overall, we end up with a surprising amount of her damage being front loaded and being buffed by Bennett. On top of that, her every hit creates crystallized shards, and that combined with Geo Resonance can buff Arlecchino's damage, as well as provide a bit of interruption resistance, which is always nice. Her animation time is also insanely short, like less than half a second, and if you don't use her burst, you will swap back to Arlecchino and have to wait very patiently for the skill to finish cooking. So if you're in single target, you can afford to use her burst too. And with Shilonen being Geo and being able to hold Fav, you don't even need to build a lot of ER on her. And in AoE, you don't have to worry about it at all. You can just skip it and go back to Arlecchino. So yeah, Chiori is quite good. The team is also just very smooth. You don't need to worry about multi-wave stuff. And it's perfect for farming artifacts in level 3 of Stygian Onslaught, since the only character who needs to burst is Bennett, and you can just battery him with Arlecchino skill. You can just clear the boss in like 10 seconds. Obviously, the overall team DPS will depend on how invested your Chiori is. So how do you do the rotation? Start with Arlecchino skill, into Shilonen skill, into Bennett's skill burst, or just burst, and then into Chiori, where we have 2 options. In single target, you use her burst, skill, then skill again, which will automatically swap you to Arlecchino. And in AoE, you skip the burst and just do skill. Very simple, very fast, very effective. And last but not least, burning. burning burns you. And this is bad because Arlecchino can't heal. And there is only one character who makes burning burn you less. It's Ineffa. And guess what? I don't have Emilie, even though I like her and I have a bunch of good weapons and artifacts for her. So yeah, I can't test her, but I would be very surprised if it was anything other than these characters in this order. And that about covers it. I'm sure that there is some niche team that might be better in certain scenarios or at certain investment levels, but that should be the overall gist of it. Everything I've mentioned is based on my own testing and my own findings and my own results. So it's possible I made a mistake somewhere. I'm just one person. I'm not even a guide maker. I don't know what's going on here. I just made this video since it was requested a lot. So yeah, if you liked it, leave a like. If you have thoughts on what you'd like me to do next, let me know. And until next time, see ya!